So, Barry, welcome. Glad you can make it. Great to see Jason Bourne up on the first time I'd seen it on the big screen, actually, and it's a pretty breathless piece of cinema.
It is, yeah, you're right.
And it sort of grabs you by the lapel and just careers you through 2 hours of mayhem and intrigue, and the power of it, I think, lies very much in your camera work.
Thank you.
That's a very much big part of it.
Yeah.
Just for some of you who don't, I'm sure most of you do know Barry and Barry's work, but just a little potted history. Barry, you came through documentaries during the 80s, doing television documentaries. You then started working with Ken Loach, and then you did pretty much all his films for about 15 years.
It was a little bit more than 15.
15, up to When the Wind Shakes the Barley.
At least a dozen films, yeah.
Which is the last one, I think it was a beautiful, beautiful film, actually. And actually, it was interesting going through your IMDb again, and how many sort of really quite iconic films of the last 10, 15 years that you've done. And I just went through and oh my God, is that one? And
Thanks.
The Hurt Locker, for instance, which I believe the New York Times, it's in its top 10 of the best films so far this century.
Okay.
Somewhere, so, you know, and The Big Short, a few years ago, which is one of the most watchable films.
And a slight variation on my style. But
what have I got here? And Coriolanus, and some of the great TV shows like The Lost Prince, which I thought were beautiful.
Thank you.
So fantastic
Thank you.
catalogue of work.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Jason Bourne.
Mm-hmm.
You've done 3 films with Paul Greengrass prior to this. So what was it like coming to the 5th in the series of Jason Bourne? Was it you joining the gang, or was it you and Paul coming back together again?
Well, obviously, it's Paul had made he didn't do the very first Bourne, which is interesting to know because that has quite a regular style of filmmaking. Paul introduced the kind of visceral style that we followed in this. It's a kind of question of like, which came first, the visceral style, or I didn't come there and copy what was done before, but I think it has to sit within that same style, So Oliver Wood shot the other 3 or 4 of those, or maybe all 4 of those films, I'm not sure. But he already had that style nailed. And there's a thing where you have a good director. The director forces you into places that you might not want to be sometimes. And that could be good or bad. I've been lucky. The directors like Catherine Bigelow and Paul Greengrass have forced me into places that are particularly good, I think. And looking at the film, it seems like, how on earth do we do it? It seems like an awful lot of work. At the time, it doesn't quite feel like that, but it did take over 100 days of shooting and 9 months of your life. But it is, it's all there. It's a big picture and a big, big success.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, because you worked with Paul on United 93, which
and Captain Phillips and Green Zone.
And Captain Phillips,
yeah.
And those stories had they were based on true events. Yeah. So that style was honed in there because there was a sort of faithfulness to the events that were portrayed.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And here it was coming to a fictional story.
You worked on.
I was very fortunate enough to work on United 93.
You did, yeah. Showed all that amazing thing at the end with the pilots and all that stuff. Was your stuff, wasn't it? Great. Thank you very much. That was our first collaboration, and it was a struggle to find out what it was that he wanted, I suppose. The subject, I think Paul is great when he has a true story that he turns into a film. It's slightly different with The Bourne because they're inventing this world. It's a fiction film. It's a fantasy film, I guess. But it's the method there is that the story keeps coming back to you. You shoot some stuff. I mean, you must admit the editing in this film is phenomenal. Christopher Rouse, the editor, he also wrote this version of the film, and he was sending back information that you need to cover this, we'll do that. We brought one character back to life that was killed in the film. You know, there's several things that went on during the filming that is all part of building and building and building and building, you know, to make sure that this level of intensity is kept throughout, you know. I thought it was interesting, I think in the opening, the classification of the film, you know, it's 18. I think it said mild violence in it or something like that. It's like, I didn't see any mild violence. I saw plenty of pretty horrific stuff in there. But it's a big film. It had you see the crew, the cast, and you know, and our second unit were all phenomenal and all you know, real pleasure to work with. Yeah.
When I was on the set of United 93, I watched you do a scene in the control center which governed the airspace of United States, and I saw how you and Paul constructed these sort of 20, 30, 45-minute takes, really, with cameras running in relay, and just the whole action, which was quite impressive. And then you'd stop for about an equal amount of time, and then go again. I mean, was anything like that in this?
To some extent, I think, again, there's very similar scenes inside the hub, the blue scenes, basically. They could run for quite a while, So that would be, but nothing quite like United 93. It had a particular thing. You shouldn't really be talking about this film because it's not what you saw. But it had a structure which was based around a 90-minute event in history. So it was natural to try and keep the cameras running over that period. And that would seem easy nowadays when you're using digital cameras, but it was 35mm film cameras, full perf, handheld, so it's 4-minute magazines. It was reloading on that film maybe up to 7 or 8 times, and overlapping cameras, so you never stop the action. It's not quite like that in this film, but it's the principle behind it that we still maintain, is that the space is given over to the actors. You know, they're not given marks to hit. I mean, the focus, I mean, there's a few moments in here where the focus is just fighting to try and find it. But given the nature of how we film and how intense it is when you're filming, you know, everyone on you know, all the focus pullers just did an incredible job on this film. You know.
No, for sure, for sure. Well, looking at the list of the equipment on this film is quite extensive. Just talk us through the choice of cameras.
We started off thinking we should all 35mm, which we'd done on all the other films, so you know, Captain Phillips and so on. But there was some influence from the second unit who knew that they were going to shoot somewhere in Las Vegas, but none of us really knew what the light levels would be. They also want to get instant playback for themselves and things. So we kind of factored in the fact that we could go and use the Alexa digitally for that. And there's a mixture of things in here. And as it was shot out of sequence, we started off with a lot of 35mm cameras, which is we used the Penelope and the Alexa and the Arri LT mixed. We used 16mm, so anything you see as a flashback or anything like through a scope or through we use 16mm cameras just to degrade things a little bit. And then there's a mixture of smaller cameras. I think we have the Canon 300 and red cameras and things like that. But they were mostly used on second unit, and that is a whole another film in itself, really. There's 2 sections, both the chases, both the chases are the main second unit work, obviously, and brilliantly directed by Simon Crane and shot by Igor Meglik. You're just a great team, you know, brilliant,
Well, like I say,
I'm glad I didn't do it. It was like it's not my style and it's not what I do. But I'm so pleased that they did it so well. You know.
Yes, because I was going to ask about, because your operating technique is you know, it's sort of pivotal to, I think, the way that this film looks. And how do you pass that on to the other cameras? I mean, how do you disseminate that?
Well, because we had plenty of prep time. We had lots of discussions, right? You know, weeks beforehand. You know, I made it clear that we weren't going to alter our style, you know, to blend in with a more maybe conventional second unit. So they added all those things. I mean, one of the things I wasn't fully aware of using zooms, and as you watch the film, but we use zooms almost all the time. There's always those little movements that concentrate your mind, or, you know, did I really hear that thing? Do I change position here? Almost everything. I wouldn't say it was handheld all the way, but I'd say maybe 60 or 70% of it was literally in the hand. But the rest of it was always on a slider like this, where you're moving slightly, and the zoom is pushing it, and you're listening to something, and it's completely loose and fluid on the head. So, you know, if someone reaches down for something, you've got a glimpse of that. That's the method, and they took that and they put it into their shooting. Yeah, so they did the incorporated zooms into their shots and did little things like that.
Because it seems to be the art of finding things just in time. And sort of, and even you might be a fraction late, and, you know, normally you think, oh, actually, you know, can we go again on that? But actually, it just adds to the sort of.
Well, I think the secret is not to be too soon. You can't be ahead of the story. So you're always trying to hit that moment where you capture the word. You know. If it's just a simple conversation between two people, you don't, you know, pan to get to the conversation before the line begins. You have to listen. Now it's coming. Now it's coming. You know, so it's good to be able to empty your mind and not know too much. I know this sounds strange, but not to be too aware of what you're shooting. You know, like, well, you're fully aware of what's shooting, but not to be too conscious of the rhythm of the dialogue or the consistency of anything. You know, and we often change the camera position so things don't look or feel the same as they did the last take or the last take before that. So you'll see many angles. We shot with 3 cameras, I should say, as well. From the beginning, we shot with 3 cameras continuously, but we'd always change those. So those 3 cameras, after 4 or 5 takes, looks like a dozen cameras, so a dozen different positions. You know.
And how does an old hand like Tommy Lee Jones react to that kind of filming?
Well, Tommy was, I've got to say, was very generous. There was moments where he'd say, I'm going to get out of my chair now, and I'll slow down as I pass you like that. And I just said, thanks, Tommy, but you don't have to. You know, and then he recognized that, you know, the camera would capture everything that happened. You know.
Right. Do you think he felt quite liberated by that?
Well, he was generous to me, all I can say, and I, you know, we had small conversations on set, and he was generous, and, you know, looks incredible. I think he's the texture of his face is just beyond, and his expressions, you know, he's very droll, and he does just the minimum he needs to do, but that minimum is world class, for sure. Yeah.
Very good, very good. By the way, if you want to pitch in with a question at any point, we'll leave some time at the end, but if something occurs to you, just throw your hand up. We've got some microphones somewhere that will go out. And all the on-set pictures I've seen of you, and I'm actually seeing your work, the camera's always on your shoulder, or invariably on your shoulder. Do you ever use aids? Like the Easy Rig or Movies, or did you ever go? No, I'm not sure. Easy Rig's a little bit. It's just another clumsier thing to put on sometimes. I can understand why people do it. You know, and we had 3 cameras, so always. And Chris McGuire is Steadicam. He likes, and he's got lots of gear that he loves to use. You know, butt dollies are a great thing. I don't know if you know, but there's just like skateboard wheels on a small seat that you can adjust the height with, and then you slide around. A lot of the stuff is just handheld, just slightly lower angles, and you get these things, you know. He shot some brilliant things. There's a scene with
Riz Ahmed when he's doing his conference thing and there's a big screen behind him. And he was always low, finding Riz in one side of the frame and balancing it with the image behind. You know, it was actually, he shot some really beautiful stuff like that. Again, but these were long takes again, I've got to say. You know, if there was a speech of 3 or 4 minutes, there would always be beginning to end. There's no point in ever trying to start something midway or cutting it before you get to the end anyway. So.
Because a lot of these, the rig or the Steadicam or anything, they're all designed to deliver sort of smoothness and sort of deliberate.
Yeah.
So of course, that very thing that you do, which is reacting and listening and then going for it. So,
it acts against you. That's what it does. Yeah. There are a few Steadicam shots in there. I know Paul kind of cringed every time we brought them out. You know, so you know, should we get the Steadicam out? And, you know, maybe it's just better handheld. And you see that you follow people in over the shoulder, round the corners, and get to the place that you and then go and settle into the shot. You know?
So I know you've mentioned the focus puller, but let's just talk about focus pullers who must love you.
No.
Ollie Driscoll was your first AC on this one.
No, he operated on this one.
Oh, he operated.
Yeah.
Did he do it? No, didn't.
No, I bumped him up. Russell. Russell
okay,
Howard was my first AC on this.
Right.
So I travel a lot because you do a lot of films all around the world in, say, commercials, and you pick up crew, and sometimes it's the focus puller, the first AC, who'll say, I'm really quite nervous. You don't put any marks down, and I won't be able to. Will you let me have a look? Can I measure things? And and I go like, hey, you're not. The thing is, you're not going to make a mistake. You're going to try, aren't you? That's the only mistake you can make if you give up, right? But if you can, you'll find it. You'll find that the picture is there. They're now with the digital HD monitors as well. You know, with the fizzing lines around them, so they can find things. Peaking on it. You can find the focus. It's it's not always that easy. I'm not saying that makes it like mechanically easy.
Yeah.
It's also about intuition and knowing where to put the focus, and sometimes leading the camera away. So I think that a focus puller gets when you're into a rhythm with them, they're adding another layer of creativity to the film.
Yeah.
That is something else, and I think, in many ways, when I'm shooting, I'm looking for 2 or 3 things to happen in each frame. I always think it's like Henri Cartier-Bresson. If you took a photograph, you'd notice that in the corner something's happening up here, and there's a cat running across the floor, and and there's that moment of tension. Somebody hovering over the water. That's the classic. But we're trying to do that 24 frames a second. All the time, reframing, balancing the picture, making a good aesthetic, and and adding something else to the story. Someone in the background is just an expression of someone in the background. It is, as long as you include it and it's out of focus, it doesn't detract from the main subject. In fact, it builds the subject up. That's how I see it. Yeah. Even it could even just be a dot of light or a highlight of something, a bit of, and a lot of it it has to feel random, but there's a lot of control over making that randomness, because you do similar things, but if you're in a documentary situation, you may have very few choices, but if you make the right choices in that situation, then you can turn an ordinary picture into something quite beautiful.
Yeah.
A way I put it is, there's the kind of painting with light, which is a true cinematic method. But if you keep this kind of the looseness of this and the chance elements, it becomes more like sculpting in light, because there's a 3-dimensional element to it. I've got to say that they tried releasing. We shot this completely as a regular film. It's not 2D. It's film. We shot it as a regular film. They released it they 3D'd it, whatever they do, and then they released it in China. But the reports came back that it made them sick. But I mean, you get that report from this kind of from watching it here. That shows some of the kind of ridiculous attitude they have to what is cinema. I'm very against 3D films. I just don't think they've got any purpose really. But you know, if you're not drawn into a film like this already, and you're not absorbed by it, and it's not, you know, then the film is no good, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have to 3D it to make it good, good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like producing a pop-up book of, you know,
Yes.
Dostoevsky.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah. I like that one. Yeah.
But I mean, but that thing about sort of taking it to the edge.
Yeah.
And then, because you know, doing documentaries, you know what absolute obstruction is, and then how much you can just still see and so it's hovering around that.
It's and the other thing is you're trying to make the audience believe that this only happened once and it had to be shot like this. That's the kind of secret to the visceral element to it. Is that, you know, and things out of focus or you know, where you're chasing something just adds to that level of interest really. And you know, you certainly get the story. I mean, it tells a story as well as any, you know, period drama. You know, there's no lack of story. There's no lack of understanding. I don't think. It's just that it's a way of keeping the audience on the edge of the seat, and that seems to work.
Yeah, and we're now quite attuned to that style of filmmaking. I think it's with a largely accepted wisdom that the Jason Bourne series has, you know, gave another Secret Service person, also JB, a sort of kick up the bum, really, didn't it? Sort of just,
they're very different films, aren't they? But they're also, you could see the similarities and how Paul very cleverly changed perspective on it, I guess.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, there's some scenes of real scale in there. I mean, obviously the Athens riot and the Vegas Strip there.
Yeah.
I mean, I was, as far as working with your gaffer and sort of planning.
Yeah.
I mean, tell us about.
Well, Harry Wiggins, gaffers. A lot of the films I've done recently. He's it's great to have the gaffer who can make the big plan but yet keep it subtle and real, you know, and we've worked on that for a long time together. He did the Green Zone, which, you know, where we kind of underexposed things for. I'll blame Harry, actually. So it wasn't me, it was Harry. So, you know, but knowing where you can take that and what you can get from it, you know, so those scenes, the Greek riots, the Athens riots were, which were shot in Tenerife, by the way. You know, we have to kind of build an overall picture of it, and he's great at that. You know, great team of people. You know, every night, every afternoon, they would have to go out and relight certain sections of street from rooftops, and you know, and and then you feel that it's just happening in the street itself. I think a lot of the film, you're meant to think that was just available light. You know, you're not meant to think that was cleverly lit or anything. You have to throw some of that, because it's not painted with light. You throw the painterliness away to gain the sculptural side of it. I think that's what we're doing. You know.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, I don't know. But I still think it's beautiful and it looks nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always loved your lighting. Actually, I think it's been it's very unobtrusive and natural. Yeah. Always has been.
Which goes back to my Ken Loach days, where you know, Ken Loach has a very classical approach to everything he does, but he doesn't want any lights in the room. He doesn't want to see. He doesn't want to feel like that's very bright and that's very bright. You know, so you had to learn this method of softly bringing in light into the space that you need it to get exactly the right thing. And The Wind That Shakes the Barley is, for me, that's the pinnacle of that approach. You know, and it you know, that when you get that kind of thing right, you know, that lifts the films to a level.
Yeah. I mean, the average budget for a Ken Loach film would fit several times into this one. When you move up to a film of this size, is it how is it carrying that philosophy into
My attitude is always the same. It's the same as if I was doing like a low budget film. It's like, you know, at the end of the day, if you put one camera into your hand with a decent lens, you can make a film, can't you? You can, you know, you have a subject, you can follow the subject. You may have 3 or 4 days to shoot it, or you may have 100 days to shoot it, but you can still make a film that way, you know. And that's what I like to do. I had to write in the prep period, which was quite a long period, to be honest. Paul asked me to write something for Universal, and I wrote a little piece saying how wonderful it would be, how there'd be great car chases. I think I used the word awesome twice,
always good.
Which I don't usually use. But at the end of it, I said, but it's, you know, fundamentally, this is all influenced by films of the late 1960s, the documentaries of Leacock, Penn Baker, and Drew, Maisel brothers, the documentary films. And there's a quote from Robert Drew, which I found on the internet, which just said, we said, fuck the dolly, fuck the tripod, fuck the crane, just shoot and shoot and shoot. And so I put that as our mantra at the bottom, and I never got a reply back. But it was like, but I know they were, you know, they're very happy. I know, you know, the producers were on set quite a lot, and they're, you know, really nice guys, and yeah, you know, they come from, some of them come from that background. You know, Frank Marshall and those people, you know, you understand that. They know the films that, you know, the Hollywood films of the 70s, which were massively influenced by the documentaries of before that, yeah. So that's where we were coming from, you know, so that was, it seemed to me the natural application of my background and the influence over American films, you know. So yeah, that was it.
And working, and you obviously shot a lot on film before with Ken and with Paul prior, but using a digital format, particularly working on the edge. We talked about working on the edge sort of compositionally, but also exposure-wise. Yeah. So which with the digital format gives you an extra sort of digging into that. Does that feel...
Yeah, well, maybe, you know what this kind of links into is really the grading of the film.
The grading.
Yeah. I mean, this is such a massive part. When I watched the film just again, which is only the second time I've seen it, that period of a month or so that I spent in the grade was, you know, that blending these things together, the different formats, knowing that film was bringing out certain qualities of which you see. And then when we switched to the digital, say for those, well, for all the Las Vegas, I think everything in Las Vegas was shot digitally, even the day exteriors, because we just wanted one package by the time we got to Vegas, you know. So we, you know, and it suited it because it was glossier and it was smoother, and it's, you know, I don't know if you've been to Vegas. It's got it has its own particular qualities, you know. So it kind of suited the camera as well, you know. But other things we did on film, and it was, you know, kept those qualities as well. And none of that would probably be appropriate for a 4K digital transmission now. But it's, you know, but it stands in its own right, doesn't it? You know?
No, I mean, I love the scenes of Vincent Cassel in his room, each one when he receives the call to move on. It's just the television light, the bedside light.
Yeah, we had just very small amounts of light. But again, it was like, you know, Paul was saying it's overlit. You know you've done it like because you've got plenty of time waiting for everyone to get ready. You've added a little bit here, a bit there, and you've shown a bit of detail in the background, and you know, look really quite beautiful, really. And Paul's like, it would be less than that, wouldn't it? You know, so you just take things away, you know, and that's often a method. It's just you put in enough stuff to make it look great, and then you take it away until you're left with the minimum that you can get away with, you know, and then you get to the grade and you go, oh my God, we should have left some of that light on, shouldn't we? You know, you know, and. But then you play with it again in the grade, and you try and bring that little piece out there, and you say, is there anything in the background? And maybe there's just a little something You know,
Yeah.
you could have made your life much easier, basically. But
Yeah.
but it's, you know, I think that's my process. It's not, you know, like there isn't a particular LUT for the film that I shot. You know, it was more to gather the information, which I've always felt like that anyway. You know, like you gather the information and then, you know, with the knowledge and the history that you have, make the film look as good as you can on the day, and use all that experience from shooting on film where you had to make it right, and then go back to it later and you know, and work it out a little bit. Yeah, get the best from it, really.
And that's an important part. You're always there at the great, or you try to.
I really try hard to be there.
Yeah.
But you know, that's one of the fortunate things, you know, that you're working with the top graders in the world as well. You know, so you
This
know,
is
Rob Pitsey
Pitsey,
did this. Yeah, and you know, that means you're going to get a very good job done. You know, and there's money and there's a budget. You know, it's not like here's a day and a half grade on this film. You know, this film will be graded until it's right. You know,
Yeah.
and the visual effects will be added, and people will come. You know, and if there's any really big issues, maybe visual effects will come and help you out as well. You know, they don't tend to need to do it, hopefully, but it's all possible, isn't it? You know, so.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Do you feel, off the back of what you were saying, when you look back at the film, do you think, oh, damn, I wish I'd have done this, or wish I'd have done that?
All the time, yeah. All the time, you're wishing I should have done this, I should have done that. You know, but I think it's that the method is almost as much. I find it quite satisfying when there's limitations, and you can justify not doing something. So you might go like, well, you know, they just don't know, but I couldn't have possibly have done anything else. You know, you don't know how hard this is. You know, that kind of feeling. And then you realise it works out pretty well like that. So it could sound very lazy, this, or it could sound too haphazard. You mean the reason I have a career doing this kind of filmmaking is because there's somewhere in between all that makes it work. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is, but I defy any other cinematographer to explain exactly what it is they do. You know, it's just a life of being a cinematographer. That's what I've done. You know, that's what I did from leaving my art school. You know, through assisting on documentaries. Some of the first ones with Roger Deakin and Dick Pope. You know, and Mike Fox, the great Mike Fox, that we both knew when we were younger. And working our way right through, you know, Ken Loach taught me, well, Chris Menges taught me via Ken Loach how to light things, and then, you know, and how to compose things, and then it applied to other films that were outside of that remit. And then, interestingly, when Paul Greengrass first called me about making United 93, I said, is it the Ken Loach films that you like? And he said, no, it's a little film that I did called Under the Skin with Dominic Savage, because that was much more exciting in a way, because I'd broken free from the Ken Loach thing. But everything is, I can say, refers back through my documentaries into Ken Loach, and then on and beyond that, you know.
Any more? One up there.
Yeah. Hi. I wanted to know about, you were talking about the grade. How do you tend to work your grade? Are you in there every day, all day for a month, or do you tend to pop in and out? Or?
Yeah, more or less, yeah. That tends to be the way, yeah. We'll set off making the first pass of everything and then get the whole film together.
Do you ever find you get, maybe this is just lack of experience, but I find I kind of sit in there and I get a bit colourblind after a while.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you know, I mean, that's what the colorist is, you know, not that I could ever do that myself. I wouldn't want to do that, because it's this collaboration again, and everything you do on film is a collaboration. You know, you can't make one step without somebody being by your side, you know. Hence, you know, like equipment. I'm totally reliant on the crew about the equipment, like the camera team, and they'll suggest, oh, this is, wow, this is new, I've just done a film where the director, is Catherine Bigelow, wanted it to be 16mm, Super 16, but there was a lot of night stuff, and I kind of, just as we were about to commit to shooting Super 16 film, the Alexa Mini was kind of geared up to use 16mm lenses. So I said, let's do the 16mm lenses on the Alexa Mini. You reduce the size of the sensor, but that's only like taking 60mm film to 35mm film, and then shot it back in our style. What's receiving the image wasn't such an issue to us, and the film has a very filmic quality because of that. Again, it's not 4K. It's not. It technically doesn't fulfill some brief at the moment, but but it's released very soon, and I hope you go and see it. Yeah. That didn't answer your question at all, did it, about grading? No. Grading is totally important, and I do spend a lot of time there. Yeah, I like doing that as well. It's but you're using this collaboration, and you go colorblind. Yeah, you don't know, is that too warm now, or too, and the next day you come back and you try and change it all again, and eventually you learn to settle down and let it happen. Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say that colorists, they're not immune to that. I mean, I've just, just finished a film, and then we both sort of just, say, I can't see this anymore. Or, we've gone so round and round. Let's just go out for a coffee and come back in with fresh eyes. So it's not just.
I always find the colorists say, okay, yeah, let's go for coffee, but I'm just going to stay here. I'm just going to pick up a few things here and make a couple of phone calls, and they never get out of the dark room. I don't know. But I think there's partly they don't want to, because if you change your perspective, you sometimes lose your concentration. I'm sure it's the same with sound. I mean, you would stop hearing sounds, wouldn't you, if you were mixing sound continuously all day long? Yeah. And by the way, the sound on this film is phenomenal. I mean, that's. I think in the last 10 years, the biggest advancement almost has been sound mixing on post-production sound mixing. First of all, you have to record it very well, obviously, but what is added to the film just blows you away, doesn't it?
Yeah. Anyway.
Microphone.
Mr. Williams, please.
Well, Barry, I must say, I was absolutely, completely involved in this picture. I mean, the tension didn't let up.
Yeah.
And I thought your contribution was absolutely remarkable.
Thank you.
And it's really interesting to hear you talking about your early days with Ken Loach, and how you, as a cinematographer, have to adapt to what the way the director wants to do things. And you've created a style there which is so much in contrast with the way Ken works.
Yes, yeah.
And the other thing that interested me is that you're working with a leading man who's getting on in years. He's not as young as he was.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if you'd been working with Robert Redford, you wouldn't have been able to do what you did there, because it was obvious that he gave you a lot of freedom in how you lit him, and it was never always very flattering.
No.
And that adds to the drama and the reality of it all. But the other thing is that when you had the scenes when he was much younger, and he really looked a lot younger, how did you do that? They were the scenes on 16.
Exactly. Yeah. That was visual effect. Yeah. So the two things. Thank you for all you said. That was great. Firstly. People fall into light, and I'm pretty much sure, I'm seeing here now, it's not always the most beautiful thing, but it's appropriate for the time. I mean, you're struggling to get, and maybe the next take you throw a little bit more diffusion on things, and you try and bring it down to something that's a little bit more controlled, but they may never go to that same position again because you're not asking them to, I mean, great actors do, Tommy Lee Jones would tend to repeat what he did very precisely, and knew where the camera was and would throw looks to the camera, like glances toward the camera, because we love those kind of three-quarter shots as well, you know, so over the shoulder, you know, a bit oblique, a bit, you know, makes it a bit more, draws you into the film a little more. Anyway, so yeah, they do, and he is getting older, and sometimes he looked massively sophisticated and suave, and you know, and other times he was in, you know, when he's being killed at the end of the, no, it's almost killed at the end of the film. He's, you know, that's not the most beautiful, you know. It's you can't really, from my point of view, go stop. We have to make this look beautiful. You know, it's part of the story. It's fallen into that position, and I think that's where the excitement is.
Yeah, the scenes when he's much younger, when his father's killed. How did you do that?
Okay, well, that's the magic of the computer graphics. Yeah, he acted them out. The early ones were all from the earlier films. Actually, there's almost like a title sequence where they say, "This is what you've done, 38 kills" or something. So that was almost a title sequence made up of all the other material from the other films. But we then added to that, and that's the stuff with his father in Beirut, and they put little dots on your face, and it magically, because they've sampled the face, and they can go back to their older material and add that on, and it was absolutely spotless. That's the bad way, but it was faultless. It was brilliant. It was actually quite brilliant, yeah. But you know, I've got to say this, Matt Damon beefed up. Those opening sequences, we had to shoot the fight sequence, the early fight sequence on the border between Greece and Albania, as it is. He was so physically ripped at that point. He couldn't drink water through the day because that spoils it. You apparently, I learned a lot about him. Can't you tell? Anyway, he was incredible. Yeah, really, really fit. And then he had to do it again partway through the film. He had to take a period off of shooting, another week maybe, you know, where he was resting, but he was pumping up to get back to another fight scene. And you know, I think it's a mixture of actors being absolutely dedicated and you know, and able to do that kind of stuff. Visual effects getting involved to correct, you know, age and things like that. I could do some of it right now. Right.
So was he doing lots of the stunts, Matt? Was he?
Yeah. The fights, yeah, you can see he's in the fights, and he's and in same with Vincent Cassel. It's very physical actors like to get involved, like to do the fighting. There was a lovely moment when we're down in those sewers at the bottom under Las Vegas, and they were doing the fight. Mm-hmm. And they had to run through the rehearsed action, and we had two doubles who looked very similar to them, and they both stood so 2 and 2, and they both went through the, you know, all this stuff, and so all 4 of them were like, it was like a dance up and down this corridor, you know. It looked I thought, wow, that's really beautiful. Pity we can't film it, but you know, you can only film the real guys at the real time. But no, those fight scenes were enormous, you know. I've got to say, I'm pleased that we don't have to do the car chases and all that kind of stuff, you know. Most of the kind of emails I received when the film first came out from people around the world was, "Oh, it's awesome. The films look great. That car chase is just amazing." And I'm like, the car chase is Simon Crane, and you know, I'll pass your message on to Simon. Thanks very much. Yeah.
And just to clarify, how long did they have to shoot that?
They had the car chase. I think they prepped for it for a month. Intense prepping for a week, 2 weeks, but they were only allowed a very small period of time on those Las Vegas streets, and they were very limited. They wouldn't close down the whole of the strip. Mm-hmm. They had to use one lane in the strip, and you know, and Las Vegas you can't close down. It was like drunks rolling around all around it. So how they managed it, I'm not quite sure. You know, there is footage on the internet where you can see Luma cranes flying through the street and all that kind of stuff. It's brilliant, yeah. first of all, they have to choreograph it and come up with the ideas, and that was weeks and weeks of work. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were on it as long as we were on it. The film. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the motorbike chase is through the streets of Tenerife, the hills and stuff, and the steps. That was all fantastic as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked great. It looked great. Any more, gentlemen there?
You mentioned the 3D version they made in China, and actually I watched it in the cinema, and it really made people sick. So many people just
Oh, really? Yeah.
so many people just quit before the film ends. And in your opinion, is it a kind of damage to your work and the 3D transfer?
Yeah, I think it damages the work. You're saying? Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. We shot it with only this intention. This is what we shot. And to take it and then to apply something on top of it is, it's uncinematic. It's against, they do. I know they take films and they regrade them if they think they're not right for that audience. They can do that. They have the right to do that in these studio films. I think I've been lucky in that I don't think most of the films I've worked on have been tampered with. 3D got mentioned a few times in prep, but I kind of, you have to say, what is it you're doing? You're making a film for the cinema, and it's to be screened, in this case, 3,000 cinemas across America and probably 300 or 400 cinemas in Britain simultaneously around the world. That's what you're making the film for, or a festival if you're going to a festival. If it's a small budget film, you still want to make your film look the best it can. And then secondly, if they're choosing to make a 3D version, that's just financial. It's just to say, okay, for another $3 million, we can make it 3D, but it will turn out over another $100 million in China. I don't know. That's what happens when you work for corporations. That's the fact, isn't it? It's true, isn't it? You know what I've said. I read. You might have read my articles. I don't have. Cinematography is an art form that that is I think the most important art form and the most important part of making a film. It's the respect that we deserve. Which does exist as you're on set. People have total respect for your directors and actors do. And producers. It's just that sometimes there are some parts of this industry that have become so industrialized and run by accountants and lawyers that it's out of touch with what we're doing. So you just lost me all my work now. What have you done?
So the sort of lower budget films where you came through, that would be an arena that feels
comfortable,
purer.
But I'm lucky. I've just worked with Catherine Bigelow, and that's another. She is, and Annapurna Pictures, and they're a completely different. That's a different ball game, really. They are totally on side. Paul Greengrass, totally on side. Adam McKay, Ken Loach. I've been very lucky that their world of cinema coincides, with us, with me, and that's how I managed to get these kind of good gigs, really, isn't it?
Well, great work will breed great work. That's normally how it works. So.
And great directors help you to make yourself better, and that's a very fortunate coincidence, really. I feel that if you get to work with the best directors, they're going to make you do the best work, and likewise, you help them to do their best work,
Was it a tight schedule on this, or did you actually have the time to kind of light your scenes, or does the fact that your style kind of allows you to kind of dictate to shoot it quite quick, and your lighting's coming from a kind of a central source, or do you kind of nitpick with the lighting a little bit?
It's a really good question.
Complicated.
It's something of all those things. It's a big budget. You've got plenty of time. But part of the method is to create this certain amount of uncertainty. You know, a typical thing, and this is not critical of anyone, but, you know, Paul Greengrass might say, we're going to do this piece, we come here, we recce this place, and it's going to be this audience and stuff, but, you know, but we really only need these close-ups here and one shot of the audience like that, and then that's all we need. But when you get there, you know that it's going to be, you know, we're going to walk in from outside and come into here and go up there, and then there'll be something in the audience, and, you know, so, but he may be throwing those in as he goes. And like I referred to, then pieces of script come back to you that you've already shot this scene, and now you're going to go back and do it again with some more stuff. You're always on your toes, and that attitude I mentioned before of like, this is just like doing a documentary. You keep that element. You have the time. You know, you could spend more and more time lighting it, but it wouldn't make the film better in my mind. You know, you're constantly saying I would go back and do it again differently, but given all the circumstances that you have to take into consideration, that is the result, and I think it's the result that Paul wanted. It's the result that Universal wanted. It's the result the audience wanted in the end, you know. And I think so it's finding that balance, yeah. Like I said, it's great if you had more and more limitations, the better, you know. So thinking that there are no limitations, that's the worst place I could be, you know. Here's an open check, just do whatever it is you have to do, you know. I mean, you could I can light things beautifully, it's easy. Not easy, I can light things beautifully if I need to, but it has to be appropriate, you know.
And there's an energy to working that way as well.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
For this.
You have to create that energy. Yeah. You know, like so when you said when we did United 93, you know, we could have broken it down into little shots of everybody on the plane, you know, and gone around and done things, or you know, what I offered to Paul was let's just shoot 40 minutes at a time. You know, they'll act it out, we'll shoot it. Let's see how that was, you know, as if it was happening for real. And that lifts that film into another level, you know, a completely different level. In fact, you know, I think that film is actually almost immaculate. When I look back on it, it takes me years to realize what it is you've actually done on a film. But when you look back at it, there's no wasted energy. All that. And there's a lot you can feel the energy that went into the film, and you get it all back, plus 10 times. You know, it's an amazing film.
Very good. A couple of questions. Yeah.
Barry, I don't think that I don't think that you've been lucky with the directors. I think the directors have been lucky with you. That's the first thing I would say.
Thank you.
To go back to the documentary style, which does intrigue me, the great cinematographers that we have, Chris Meng, as you mentioned earlier, yourself, learned from the documentary background. Now, in your work, with for example, on the Hurt Locker, where anybody who knows anything about film knows that the success of that film was because of your work. How did you feel when the Oscars were given and you were ignored?
Well, it had followed the BAFTAs, and I was awarded the BAFTA, so that was, you know, that was good. But and it was my first trip to the Oscars. It was a bit of a show, really. There are TV shows that you happen to be involved in, you know, basically, and it was the first 3D film that it was up against. But that also, and against there were four very good films, which anyone could have won an Oscar for sure, and one film that was 3D, and it was a novelty, and somehow that, I'm not being rude to Mario Fiore, because he says the same thing, I know, but not quite like I would say, but he said, you know, that it didn't deserve to win the Oscar because it was more of an animated film, and, you know, and the other four films that were up for Oscars in the cinematography, you know, should probably have won that film, for that award. But like I said, I got the BAFTA, and that's, you know, and the respect from that is, you know, I think fantastic, yeah. And the film still won 6 Oscars and 6 BAFTAs, and it cost $5 million, and it was up against the most expensive film in the world as Avatar, and Catherine had been married to, you know, it was a great story, and I'm really pleased that I got the opportunity to go to the Oscars, you know, but then I don't think you need to keep repeating that as a life. I'd also said to myself, I will never go to Las Vegas, ever. I promised myself. I would turn it on. But in that 1 year, the Big Short needed scenes in Las Vegas, so I went to Las Vegas. And then I finished the Big Short. I came back, and 10 days later, started prep on the Bourne film, and said, okay, first thing we're doing is going to Vegas. So I'm back on a plane to Vegas, and we went 3 times to Vegas that year, and then we went back at the end of the year, and then we started, what would it be, 2016, shooting in Vegas. So I spent an awful lot of time
now you've
there.
got membership to many of
Yeah, all the clubs, yeah.
Great.
I'm really, really rich now as well, yeah. Yeah, I've got to say, if you do ever go to Vegas, just take a little trip out to the mountains. It's absolutely the opposite of Vegas, and very, very beautiful, very spiritual place, lovely. Yeah. But not the Strip.
Down here.
Hi. You mentioned that you went to art school, and I just wanted to know a bit more about like how you started out, and also if you have any tips for people that are starting out in the industry.
Like yourself.
Yeah, like us.
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, well, I mean, it wasn't easy because I'd gone through an art school system, but I just knew that I was a cinematographer in my heart, and I knew that's what I was going to do, sculpture. So it became, the only way in was doing documentaries because it was pretty hard. The ACTT, you know, was difficult. You had to be a member to get a job. You had to have a job to be a member. So that was all quite tricky. The BBC you could work for. We ended up working on a lot of BBC and documentaries, and Channel 4 came about, and music videos came about. So they gave us everybody a break. I was saying for Roger Deakins, Dick Pope, and so on and so on. So that was our way of getting a break. I think the advice for you guys is to get yourself into groups of people making film, because, and it doesn't, in a sense, it's what you're doing. You're making a small network of people. And I'd say include musicians and actors and writers and painters, and make yourself into a movement and make films, because I think from that's where you'll be recognized. And there's a massive expansion happening. You're in a really good place now. I think there's going to be more and more content necessary, and I think only high quality content has any value. And I think the BSC represents that. I think that's our aim, is to preserve the vision, and I think that's what's important, is that you learn your trade very well. You practice it, which is the best way of learning. And to practice it, you've got to get out there and go and make it. And then people come looking for you in the end. It doesn't happen straight away, but they'll come find you because content is necessary. And I wish you all the very best of luck. You're going to be the future of the BSC and British cinema. I mean, we have a very high standard. We have one of the greatest standards of cinema and cinematography in the world. And I'm really proud to have been the president. I'm sure Mike will be a great, great president following on from me. And there's many other presidents here. It's just, that's the future, is being great at your job, being yourself, being an individual, finding your voice, and understanding that it's a collective already. You're never out there on your own. You're with someone else all the time. That's the only way. I would have been a sculptor, but I would never have got out of bed. I need a call sheet to tell me what to do. But when I get the call sheet, my energy and my life just like, I'm 63 now, and people, I turn up on set and they go like, you know, all those shots inside the cars, by the way, you know, like traveling shots in cars and things like that. Like Chris Maguire is 6'6", and you know, I just go, he wouldn't get in the car. So, and it's not that I love it. I get in. I got my leave the seat. I get the camera, you know, and I struggle with the camera, and I love it. And you get out, you just I feel more energized by doing that than standing by the monitor. It's not my way, but that you've got to find your way. It could be beautiful lighting. It could be a visceral style. It could be whatever, you know. But you know, you'll find it. I think that's my advice. but do it well. Whatever you do, do it well.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a perfect
Okay.
note to end. I'm getting the signal that that we're done. Barry, thank you very much for your past work and for your future work. Great films to come. Thank you for the last 3 years of presidency.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Great, Mike. Thank you.